television today, even in 2020, Don Lemon, I believe, is the only African-American hosting a cable news show in the evening out of CNN, MSNBC, and Fox. In whatever year I joined the Today Show, I was the first Black woman to ever anchor that show, which had been on for 60 years. So with that said, clearly the media is not as diverse as it should be, but with every step we take, it's one, hopefully, that always is forward and inclusive. You are stunned that you're the first, and it's at 2014.
Right.
And then you're torn because you don't want to be, the Black anchor. You want to be Tamron Hill, who's done this for 25 years. I just did an interview with Beverly Johnson, and I had a similar experience that she had when she became the first African-American woman ever on the cover of U.S. Vogue. You then realize there's a responsibility, and you are not there just for you. And for me, there was that moment where I thought, okay, wow, how can I be the first after all these years? And then you're thinking, wait a minute, but I want to be known as a journalist. And then the third tier of it is, I have a responsibility, and I have to protect this. And I have to make sure that every girl, every boy watching of color knows that they can do it too. So you become a gatekeeper. And it's a responsibility that maybe my white female colleagues on the show did not feel. They may have their own journey of responsibility, but that was mine. My mother, I was also raised by my stepfather, who I refer to as the dad God meant for me to have. He came into my life when I was 10, I think 8 or 10 years old. So my parents, I was very, very blessed. When my dad passed away, I just started filling in on the Today Show, and he was in the hospital, and they didn't have cable, and I happened to be filling in on the Today Show, and he said he was sleeping and woke up and saw me on there filling in. So my parents have been there for every step of the way. I jokingly but seriously say my dad cooked every meal. I didn't know women could cook because my mom's mom passed away when she was 10. So she didn't learn to cook. And then she turns out she falls in love with my dad, who is a cook, and he cooked every meal. So I had a very strong mom who was unapologetic and this strong Black woman, but I was fortunate to have a dad who was very hands-on. So when I talk about being a strong woman, I always make sure to give my dad that love, because so many people think it's woman to woman, but it's important, obviously, for your father, if they're in your life, to be recognized. And I was very lucky to not have, my biological dad wasn't there for the ride, but the man who was meant to be there for the ride to get me to this finish line was, and I had incredible parents. I was compelled to share the story. I had just moved here to New York, and I was hosting an event for Day One, which is an organization that teaches teenagers dating responsibility, the wrongs and rights of dating, what love is supposed to be and not be. And I think the host or the MC that was scheduled canceled, and it was like a last minute request. They didn't know who I was, and I didn't know. I was like, okay, great, I'm new to New York. Let me start doing, I believe, because when you move somewhere, I think it's very important to start, doing things in the community and giving back, given what we do for a living. Anyway, I show up at the event, and there were young women, most of them under the age of 18, who were sharing their stories of abuse and survival. And there was one young woman who talked about the fact that she had, stitches in her head and just this brutality that she'd survived. And where I'm from, we have this saying, fair exchange, no robbery. And I felt like they were telling me their story, but I was hiding a secret that had happened in my own family. And that wasn't a fair exchange. So they're telling me, and I said, I have to share. And that's when I first started speaking about what had happened with my sister and what I learned about silence, what I learned about the fear of speaking up and telling a loved one, I don't like what's happening in your life. So as a result, I started sharing my sister's story. And then I was on the cover of People magazine about it. And I noticed that people were referring to her as Tamron Hill's sister who was killed. And I'm like, wait a minute, she had a name. She's a mom. Her name is Renata. And so with Safe Horizon, the largest shelter helping families survive violence, we teamed up and we created the Tamron Heart Renata Fund. So it's been an opportunity that I obviously wish I didn't have, but I have, and I want to make sure we can help as many people as possible. Well, I think everything we do, it doesn't matter what it is, it's innately different because it's you. So if there's a guy today going into the office and, I don't know, he's a manager, it's different because it's you. I tell people all the time, we try to look for ways to stand out. The very mere fact that you exist, you stand out. And for me, we're all doing the same thing, so people look to see how you're going to do it different. And I think for me and our show, it really is about talking to people. It's meeting people where they are. I want people to watch the show and feel like, okay, that's my girl, or that's my friend, and oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Today we talked about Shakira doing during the Super Bowl. She did this chant, and it turned into a meme where people, why is she sticking her tongue out? Well, it turns out it's an Arabic call of joy. It's called a zaruda. And people were dragging her on social media. And then all of a sudden we all had to stop and like, okay, that was a teachable moment. Now I actually learned something about a whole nother culture that I was so willing to mock. And I think that's the spirit of our show. I don't lecture, I live. I tell people, stop defending your life, live your life. And if we can do that, we'll learn from each other. We do a lot of love and relationship. I was single until I was 49. Well, I wasn't single, I was dating. But I wasn't married until I was in my late 40s. I wasn't a mom until I was in my late 40s. And so much of what I've learned on both fronts, I learned from talking to people and getting advice. And so that's what we do on our show. What I want to say to all the young people, especially young Black girls, it's a very simple thing. And still I rise.